Hey, this will be a pretty short one today. Want to talk about how to learn how to play maps. It's pretty simple, and we don't have a whole lot to go over because most of the maps have been out forever. The most recent Halo game is Halo 5, which is 5 years old at this point. But with Infinite coming out, it'll be useful to know how to think about those maps. And if you're getting into Halo now, when you haven't in the past, these might help you get better at the maps that are in there currently. So the general idea behind this is you shouldn't play the maps as they were intended when they were made. Um, that is sort of mostly true. A lot of people put a lot of time into designing maps, and pretty much everything in there is intended. But what I mean by intended is when you make a map, you have to make it presentable. It has to make sense to people, and it has to work as an environment. So by that I mean there have to be clearly defined structures on the map. Like, is it a two-base map? Is it just a field with no actual bases in it? Is it a four-base map? Is it symmetrical? Is it asymmetrical? What are the normal routes through the map? Like, are there main pathways and ramps that you walk along that are like, here is the way you should get to this place? Are there clearly defined platforms for places where you should go? I think Midship and or Heretic and or Truth and or Zealot, all the same map, just different versions of it, make a lot of sense here. Where like you have two bases, it's symmetrical, the bases are across from each other. Each has a left and a right side of the map, which are asymmetrical. So you have red base, blue base are mirrored. On one side of the map, there's a pink tower, and on the other side of the map, there's a carbine tower, and those are not symmetrical. But it's a symmetrical map. And then there's like three clearly defined walkways out of the bases, either towards car or pink, and there's like top mid is a clearly defined platform. Like, it all makes sense for where you're supposed to be walking. But that said, there's like a lot of stuff you could do that isn't clear. Like P3 on Heretic and Midship, there's no normal path to that. You have to jump up to it, and like if you look at it initially, it doesn't look like that. Um, and then also in the presentation part of it, there's the theme. Like, is it an inside map? Is it an outside map? Like Blood Gulch or Coag or whatever else it's been called throughout the years. What Red versus Blue was made in. Like, that's an outside map. It has two bases. Um, there's like Isolation in Halo 3 is technically an outside map. There's like two underground bases to it. And like, is it a Covenant map? Is it a human map? Is it out in the woods somewhere? All of that sort of ties into how the map's presented and intended, where if you give it to somebody who doesn't play Halo, they'll find ways to get around it, right? You can't make something super convoluted where only people who know like technical jumps in Halo, they know how to find sight lines. Like, you have to make a map that people who don't know those things can play it and have a good time. Um, so I guess you could swap intended for presented for me here, but intended is like anybody who picks up the game, specifically someone who isn't familiar with it, there should be an intended way to play that map, and that's going to be walk to the bases, walk along these lines. You'll have a good time if you do it. But stuff that they don't put in that are like very specifically everything you can see from everywhere on the map. They're not going to catch all of this, but these maps get play tested. 343 has a pro team that's testing these, like in high level games, and finding broken sight lines and stuff that you shouldn't be able to see. There's terrain jumps, which a lot of it relies on the theming of the map. Um, One of the biggest complaints about Reach, and I'm pretty sure is in Halo 5 as well. I haven't really kept up with H5. A lot of the maps were forged, and I don't know if you're familiar with Forge, but it's pretty bland. You have walls. I mean, you have some doodads you can put in there, but they're just gray blocks. So first party maps, unless the Halo Infinite Forge is fucking bonkers, first party maps have to have feeling to them. They have to feel like an environment that you can play with, and with that comes a lot of stuff with the terrain that you can use in your gameplay. I'll go over some examples of it, but stuff like a box, a little nudge on the wall. There's a really famous one on Guardian. I don't know how familiar with the Guardian, but under Gold Lift, there's like the two drop downs on either side of the actual lift, and there's this weird like half wall segment built into those cubbies, which isn't technically a ledge, but because of the geometry of the art for it, you can jump crouch into it. And if you time your jump and uncrouch properly, you can actually jump up to top gold from bottom gold without taking the lift. That's not intended as far as I'm concerned. I don't think anyone play tested that when, yeah, this jump is like 1 to 3 frame perfect and you have to crouch in a thing that isn't on the map, but you can do it. And it comes into play a lot because lifts make noise. They put you on a forced trajectory a lot of the time, and then Snipe 2 is probably going to be looking at you probably 30% of the time you lift. So that's going to get killed really quickly, and there's this cool thing to do with the terrain to get up there. Technical routes play into that. The easiest one, again, is P3. P3 on Heretic and Midship, there's no map designed, clearly laid out. Here's how you walk to P3. You have to jump up the front of it. You have to jump up the wing on the like mid side of the street, or you have to like jump backwards onto the sloping wall and walk back up to it. None of that makes sense looking at the map. If you look at Heretic for the first time and you showed somebody, you're like, oh, there's a cool like covered tower over there, and no one thinks of how you get on the roof. Technical routes also open up faster ways to get places, which I'll go over in the one example I have. And then grenade placement is something I threw in here. It's not as critical as the other three, but I also plan on doing a grenade video later, which will cover this more in depth. But the general idea is you have to understand grenade angles, and you have to use everything at all times on the map to find the right way to get a grenade where you need it to be. A lot of times it's banking off a box. It's like hitting some weird angle on the roof or the wall to like put it in a place that you want it to be. My absolute favorite thing when playing bad people is when you have to run in through a doorway. You can throw it like into the crack of the doorway instead of like bouncing it out in the open, and they just run over it, chasing you through the wall. I hope all of that made sense. I ran through it pretty quickly in my opinion, but the general idea is maps have to be designed for everybody, and you have to find ways in the art style of the map to get advantages on it. So this is the first one I have for Creative Sightlines. By first, I mean it's the only, but it's the first one I have with pictures on here. So this is the pit, and it's a pretty niche one. And by niche, I mean you have to have a sniper rifle on your side of the map, and that's like the constraint for using the sightline. But if you've ever played Pit, you're pretty familiar with where this is, right? This is Snipe Tower, this is your base, and you can stand here. And if you look specifically where this is looking, this sees people lifting to their Snipe Tower. So this is the other Snipe Tower base. This is me mid-lift for the sniper. And this like area right here is where this person is standing. So it's like really hard to pre-aim this because you have to care about your sword, you have to care about sword bridge, their training. Like when you lift, you also want to pre-aim stuff, especially if you're a snipe battle. You have to like pre-aim here, and you have to look for this tower because when you complete this lift, you end up in vision of the S2s. So pre-aiming this spot is really hard to pre-aim this while you're lifting and then get your crosshair in the right place to pre-aim S2. So when you're here, you're almost never going to get counter-sniped unless they saw you walk there, which honestly will probably happen a lot against really good people. But this is a cool sightline where, like, if you look at this inherently, no one thinks about this sightline because you're not looking at anything. You're looking at a wall on the other side of the map, and you're looking at your training, which doesn't feel useful. Like, why would you stand here? You can only see your training, but in reality, you can see their lift. So this is something where, like, you have to always understand what the map is blocking and then find out what's not blocking and how can you take advantage of that. So when you're going through maps, like if Infinite comes out, you're trying to learn how to play maps, learn where the people shoot you, or if you die to somebody in Master Chief Collection and you're like, how the hell did he shoot me? Either watch the VOD or think about like, where was he standing that shot you, and then add that to your game. There are thousands of sight lines. There's hundreds per map. They're like, every position can see a lot of different spots. So get creative with it and you'll find some cool stuff. Train jumps, this is probably the most basic, but if you've played new people to Halo or people who aren't good, or you see this a lot, people just walk down hallways and like that's just what they do. They walk down the hallway. But these yellow walls on the pit, you can jump on like really, really easily. You can just fucking hop on it. Like, why would you not? So say you got a call that someone's running through green to your green on pit. Instead of standing here and waiting for them, we're going to turn the corner and kill you, or like bounce a frag off it and hit this and hit you. You can just like hop up on this thing and stand here. Right? Like this is really easy. I'm sure the people who made the map caught this in QA and went like, should we keep this or not? Because this is just a texture design for the map, right? It's just this like yellow wall padding for whatever reason. I forget what the pit is thematically. It's like some air hanger or something. Um, but this is a really, really simple jump. It's something that once you know about it, it's just inherently part of your game. But if you look at these two different sight lines and imagine somebody walking out here, like look at how much more of an advantage this person here has. You're going to get the first shot 100% of the time. Because the person walking through here has to cover like 4 or 5 different angles. You can just stand here, get a massive advantage for free. So I think this sentence is probably one of the best ones I've written for slideshows. Like I was saying earlier, map creators have to make an environment feel realistic for people who are not super hardcore. I only care about competitive gaming styles. So there are going to be things in the map that are there for texture and feeling, and you can use those. You can jump off them. You can find weird sight lines for them. You can throw grenades off of them, use them, look for them, and you'll get a lot of good benefit out of them. For the better routes, this is the same thing. I'll just let you kind of watch these two GIFs for a second. They're both going from my training pit to my training. The one on the right is like twice as fast. Not only is it twice as fast, it's safer, and you have better options for taking fights. It's harder to leave. Like the guy walking up the ramp can use this like shield as a buffer to block stuff. But you get pre-nated, people can watch you going there. It's super fucking slow. Like, why would you ever do this when you can take this route? To be fair, this is like an exaggerated example because you can just jump on the ramp and it's like almost as fast. But like looking at this, the clearly designed route is the one on the left, right? If you've never played this map before, this is how you're going to get up here. You're going to walk this way. You can jump here, you can jump here. Like you can take different routes to get there. But I wanted to show the difference between using map geometry to get to places faster and in different routes where people aren't going to be pre-aiming you versus just walking along the map designed route. There are these fucking everywhere. I think every map in the game has a couple routes like this where there's a clearly defined way to get there that the map designers want everyone to take, and then there are other ways for people who are better at the game, either with mechanics or just map knowledge, to get to that place faster and like with a big advantage on whoever may be there. That's pretty much it for finding better routes. This one, again, if you watch the positioning video and you know how important having options for taking fights is, this is going to be your best way for getting it. The last one's really simple. It's just using it for grenades. It's not a very complex example. It's just on narrows where I'm banking off of this wall to put it top mid. This is the same grenade throw from 2 different angles, but you can see how safely I can get a grenade to these 2 pockets on top narrows, which 80% of the time in the game, someone will be there, like in this, either in this zone or pushing up one of these ramps. And you wouldn't stand here when you throw it. You'd be like walking up to it. But this just kind of looks like a railing, right? Like it's just there so that you don't walk off the map, and that's kind of about it. But you can just bounce a grenade off it. And like, yeah, it seems simple, and there are like literally infinite ways to throw a grenade off of a wall, but you can see how important it is to know that throwing a grenade here puts a grenade here. And this does a lot. It controls this whole space. It's also really good if you know someone else is pushing their ramp, you can pre-nade it and come up safely. Something I was doing for the longest time is walking up this ramp and always bouncing it straight in front of me off of this. So you can see when he walks forward this way, I would throw it in front of me and hit this ramp specifically, and it would just kind of bounce up and explode in the air up here, but it would explode closer to me. Here you can play with the actual angle that you're throwing it off. Like you'd walk up this way and bounce it farther towards them. But get used to playing maps, get used to looking at where you can put grenades from what places. That pretty much sums it up. Like I said, hopefully pretty short and sweet. Just things that you should be thinking about when you're learning a new map. Probably when Infinite comes out, but if you're new to MCC, here you go. Here's some examples. I think that's about it. I hope that was helpful, and see you guys later.